Hey! What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Full Blast. I am your host, Raja Burrows. Today, we have a very special episode. Our buddy Versavia is on the air. We're gonna be chatting about Observer stuff.
I know. A couple of observers talking about Observer things.
Sign me up.
Well, literally, you signed up. You're here.
I did. That's a thing that happened. Yeah, so I know that you have a big analogy that that we've been talking about, that you've been thinking about when it comes to observers.
Yeah.
I guess let's start with the analogy. Let's lay the groundwork, so to speak.
Oh, I should.
The analogy. And then from there we'll see where it goes.
That sounds good. Well, I guess before we dive into that,
yeah.
On the whole, kind of.
Yeah.
There's so many things that we can talk about with regards to observers.
Sure.
Jessica. So there's so many things that we can talk about with regards to observers. There's the human needs, or whether intuition versus sensing or anything like that.
Right.
This particular case, I'm very interested in doing a deep dive in the two axes and differ, because you're Savior and I'm Savior SE, but ultimately we both have SE and NI, and the way that our brain takes in information is going to be very different from people who are NESI.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the part that I'm really curious about, especially because to me, NE just does not really make sense. And it didn't until all of this clicked, the stuff that I'm sharing with you guys.
Please enlighten me, because it still doesn't make sense to me.
So the way that I think about it is kind of like if you take a puzzle.
Sure.
And you're putting a puzzle together, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so for funsies, how do you go about putting together a puzzle?
Well, step one, you got to separate the edges from the middle pieces.
Of course. You always start with the edges.
Right?
Anybody who doesn't start with an edge, you're a heathen, and I don't know what's wrong with you.
Well, the only thing that I would say, the only reason why I would ever not start with the edge is if it's I don't know, all blue, but then there's a werewolf that's black.
Yeah.
And so if there's something very clear, whatever. Mm-hmm. But assuming it's a normal puzzle of a castle or a pony or some shit. because I'm a 7-year-old girl, okay?
Nothing wrong with being a 7-year-old girl.
So I do the edges.
We're great.
So step one, you separate the edges from the middle pieces. Step two, you build the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I group by color. So I'm okay, is there generally speaking, normal puzzles. Okay, if the castle is gray, I'm going to put the gray pieces near-ish each other.
Yeah.
Maybe a rock, but
we'll start clustering them by some kind of factor.
Something.
Probably color, but it might not be color. But
yeah, it might not be color. Right, something that is clearly, okay, this is a wolf, and this is a bunny, and this is a pony, and whatever.
Yeah.
And then from there, I'll build out the individual shapes.
Yeah, shapes.
Right? The individual elements, the castle, the pony, the knight, the whatever. I now have this beautiful high fantasy puzzle in my head that I'm building. I just want you to know.
That's another subject I'd love to discuss at one point, is what shape your thoughts take, because my thoughts are black, which is you're actually seeing this castle in your head.
No, not really.
Okay. Oh, okay.
No.
Anyway, that's another topic. We'll circle back to that one day.
Once I have all of the main elements, then it's okay, now I can fill in the trees and the sky and the pond and the whatever.
Yeah.
So it very much is a starting with the out and then working my way, not necessarily towards the center, but I need the edges and I need the big anchor points to guide where to put because the water is kind of like the sky, not just
yeah. When you're together a puzzle.
Yeah, and not just in terms of shade, but in terms of composition. Like the function, unless it's like a very clear fountain, or if it's just like river, pond, stream, sky thing, they function. They serve similar functions in the overall composition. So I need to do that again. Conceptually, I need to link them, right?
NITE.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And then from there, once I have the big elements and the edges, then it's just a crapshoot. Then it's like, I don't know.
Let's just start. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Let's try shit.
Yeah.
So that's how I do puzzles.
So that's very similar to how I do it. And I have no idea if people who are NESI might do it differently or not. I would love to hear from you guys. Like, just if you want to share how you approach it, but I'm using that as an example because I think that's a very SENI way of approaching it, in the sense that, like, lay out all the puzzle pieces, because I got to gather all of the sensory, and then start clustering them and NIing them into their little buckets.
Yeah.
And then putting it together further from there. So in this puzzle analogy, and again, I don't know if this is how an NESI will necessarily create a puzzle, but this is the way of thinking. If you say you have like one part of the puzzle that's missing just a single piece on the inside, right?
Sure.
There are a couple of factors that will determine whether or not that piece fits in there. The shapes of the pieces around it, as well as whatever colors, right? Sure. So for us, we'll maybe like look at all of the sensory, and we'll be like, oh, it's most likely this one. And we'll pick one NI and use that kind of predictably. For SINE, it's kind of the opposite, in that, like, I need concrete existing sensory information, because there are so many different possibilities of what could fit in here, right? Like, you might be in the middle of a sky and you might be looking for a blue piece, but what if the piece that you're looking for has a bird on it and you never would have noticed it? So NE imagination will just go crazy with, like, oh, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. And in order to kind of ground it, you need some kind of like really solid, specific sensory.
Right.
In the sense that, like, you need to know, if you only have, say, 3 of the sides and one of them is still blank, that will help you narrow down what sensory piece might go in there. But because you don't have all of the SI, there's still NE out there that could fit.
Right.
Does this make sense?
Yes. So it makes sense. I love one thing that has helped me, and I know that this is a little bit in anecdote land, but I feel like the SENI axis is more attuned to, more consciously aware of, puts more weight into the idea of, like, probability and percentages.
Yes.
In the sense of, the way that you were describing it is like, I have this one empty, in this one chunk, I have one empty slot. Let me look at all of the sensory and see what the 3 most likely options are first.
Yes.
And then, okay, if we're wrong, we're wrong.
Yes.
Whatever. Let's go to, but then from there, like, let's say we are wrong. Let's say it's like, these 3 that I thought, whatever.
Yeah.
We are not then going to be like, well, fuck it. It could be any of them.
Yes.
Right? We're gonna be like, okay, those 3 didn't work. Great. What's 4, 5, and 6?
Right.
What's 7, 8, and like, and
we want to narrow down our possibilities.
Right. And of course we want to guess right the first time, because who doesn't? But when we guess wrong, there's a very clear conceptual, like, abstract ranking.
Yeah. There's some kind of, whether we realize it or not, there's some kind of NI conceptual thread that led us to believe that it was one of these 3 pieces. That conceptual thread might have been that they all look like they are blue with clouds on them or something like that, But whatever that NI thing is, we'll hold on to that NI thread and look for other sensory that fits within it.
Right. As opposed to, whereas the NESI axis is much more comfortable going, okay, I thought these three were going to be likely because they're blue with clouds on. But let's question that premise. What if, you know what? If this is a pond, maybe I should be looking for something that's brown and gray because there's rocks in the pond. Okay. Let me question this premise.
Yeah.
Whenever I guess wrong, it's the premise that changes.
That's well put. Yes. And the other thing that I think I don't know that I've ever heard Dave and Shan talk about this explicitly, is that the gather function is not just, I want to gather sensory or I want to gather concept. It's I need to gather all of them before I'm allowed to narrow down. So that means the NE user will want to gather all the various possibilities before they narrow down to any kind of sensory that actually locks that NE down into what actually was and actually did happen, right? And that's one of the reasons why I like NESIs are so fucking good at puns. You know, I am like the least punny person you have ever. I can't, like, if I drop one pun a year, it's like a victory for me. And that's because my brain isn't collecting various ways that things are connected in the way that, like, you know, they might be connected by sound or meaning or things like that. Whereas NE users, and I think you, like, as a Savior NI, you have easier access to this. But NE users, they are collecting all those very different ways that, like, so they'll hear a single word and they will be like, oh, and that's like this and like this and like this and like this, because they're collecting all of those connections. And all of them, not just a few.
So I have a perfect segue to back it up.
Bring it.
I studied voice classical singing in college. One of my favorite composers is a guy named Reynaldo Hahn. Whatever. So, but his last name is Hahn. That's Hahn, I think is how
like
it's spelled.
Han Solo.
Well, that's okay. So check this out. So I was ending. So see, you just did the thing.
I did, but I was doing it in a totally different way. Where yes, continue.
So,
sorry.
But okay, so I think the thread still works because we were talking about like what structure I was going to do for for what set I was going to do do the recital in, right? And I was like, if I end with the Han pieces, then that could really be my Han song. So I was connecting the rhyme of Han and Swan.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, Han, what does Han rhyme with? Han, Swan, gone after Han. So I locked in onto the premise of rhyme.
Right.
So I made Han song like Swan song.
Right.
The composer, who is a hardcore NE user, he's like ENTP-ish. He was like, or it could be your Han Solo. And I totally missed. Oh, right. Han also sounds like Han Solo. And he connected the solo in Han Solo's last name to the fact that I was doing a recital by myself. And I was like, but again, it's such a like, there are so many very disparate.
It's divergent thinking, rather than convergent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it works. It makes sense because so I think that I can get away, and maybe this is just my feminine and I wanting to be very wishy-washy about things, as it is wont to do. But I feel like when my NI makes a pun, it can be a little looser. Like Han song, like, okay, it's not the best pun in the world, but like I see where you were going.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. See, and so, I didn't even get that far though.
Yeah.
So that's okay.
Point is,
I'll own all of you guys at SC.
I can
sports thing.
I'm like, okay, the sensory just kind of has to help move the analogy along.
Yeah.
Right. Again, the SE can keep moving, it's forward thinking, it's doing more. It's like, all right, that didn't work, whatever. Let's just keep the train going. But in order for the Han Solo joke to work, Han Solo, the Star Wars character, has to be rock solid. You have to know who.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All of that
censor needs to be like SI.
Right. There's a comic named Anthony Jeselnik. He's great. And he has a joke about very dark humor. So if you're not a dark humor fan, plug your ears for the next 35 seconds. But it's the joke, and I'm going to screw this up. He's like, I had a son, a 2-year-old son, who died the same way, that died for the same reason that Eric Clapton's son died. Inspiration.
Wait.
Okay, so that's an example of, and it's funny when he did it for the crowd, there was like a couple of groans, some people got it, some people didn't, and then he explains, he's like, in order to understand that joke, you got to know a few things.
Okay.
1, you have to know who Eric Clapton is.
Right.
2, you have to know that his son fell off a balcony because the nanny was like, I don't know.
Okay.
It was a freak accident, but he had a son who died who was 2.
That sucks.
And 3, you have to know that one of Eric Clapton's most famous songs is a song called Tears in Heaven, which he wrote about his son who died.
Oh.
And then you have to tie all of that together and think that what I just said was funny. But I bring that up, and actually you illustrated proof positive of when the NESI axis fails. It's because those individual sensory things that have to be locked in for the connections to work. If they're not locked in, everything falls apart. Right.
That's very true. Yeah, I'm thinking about Bo Burnham and his flavor of humor.
Yes.
Fucking brilliant.
It's
that's too much.
Again, no, Bo's another good one. So we got comments in the chat.
Yes, we do. That's too many steps from Jessica. I agree.
Right.
But yeah, Bo Burnham's sense of humor is very much he plays with juxtaposition and expectations, which at the end of the day, all comics play with expectations. Right, sure. Right? But the way that he subverts them is in like NE taking it to a completely like somewhere that's completely out of left field, and in the process of doing that, making an FI point that like hits you right in the fucking heart. Like,
yes,
you know?
Yeah. His whole song. So I don't agree with it. I don't think it holds up. I think it was very funny when he did it. His song about contemporary country music, it works because he subverts the expectations, and he's like playing with form, and he's very much mocking like the bro country movement of like 2013 and 2014.
Bro country movement. I didn't think that was a thing.
It was very much.
I don't know anything about country music though, so.
But it works because he's so SI faithful to the sensory. Same with Weird Al. Weird Al slaves, and I mean slaves over the perfection, the tempo, the sound, the instrumentation of all of his parodies, to the point that now that he's like turbo famous, he called Imagine Dragons when he wanted to do a parody of one of their songs.
Okay.
He called this band.
Okay.
And he's like, hey, I'm Weird Al. I want to parody one of your songs. First, do I have permission? And they're like, oh my God, we've made it. Weird Al's making fun of our song. He says, but secondly, can you give me a list of all of the gear that you used and the exact settings you used on your gear so that we can replicate with that level of precision?
Yes.
Because it's that level of precision that gives his NE the freedom to go
wherever the fuck it wants to go. Right, because it is grounded in very specific, very concrete sensory. you
Right.
know, and it's like it's this thing, and because this is the thing that exists, or this is the thing that happened,
Yeah.
and we know that is like immovable, whether masculine or sensory, doesn't matter. But then from there, you go boom, everything else is possible.
Exactly.
And I don't get that. My brain doesn't work that way.
Well, here's the thing, though. I think that when it comes to possibilities, we're just looking for different possibilities. We're not looking for, Lord Song Royals. We're not looking to take that to aluminum foil. Okay, what are all of the different ways that aluminum foil gets you? We're not, right? Because again, first verse is like wrapping food in aluminum foil. Second verse is like, finally, I have cracked the code, wearing the tinfoil hats.
Okay.
Very funny, very cute. It works because he honors the sensory of Lord's song. The possibilities I feel like our axis is looking for, we're just looking for sensory possibilities. We're looking for, okay, the concept, the pattern, the association by rhyme thing is very clear. It's very solid. The pattern, if I'm writing a song.
And the sensory is disposable. So it's like, this sensory doesn't fit. Okay, what's the next one? Oh, this doesn't fit. Okay. Right. Oh, this one kind of fits.
Yeah. If I'm writing a pop song, I'm not a good songwriter. I don't like doing it. But for me, I'm more sketch writing, comedy, whatever. But using songwriting, as an example, I could crank out 1 million songs in a weekend that are verse, chorus, bridge, half a verse, 2 chorus, done.
Okay.
It's just a very super duper cookie cutter formula for writing. It's the hero's journey of songwriting, right? Okay. Every movie has the same plot. Every song has the same structure.
Yeah.
Unless you're Rush, whatever. But within that, I'm like, I can do whatever I want. All of the lyrics are disposable. I can
ITE
process
the framework for how it all works. So that means all the sensory is like plug and chug.
Yeah, plug and chug. And more importantly, once I've written a song with this formula, I'm not like, well, I guess I can't use that formula the next. No.
Yeah, exactly. You reuse it. If it works, you keep going with it.
I'm just gonna keep doing the thing.
It's the sensory that's like, oh, okay, I've already had that experience. Why would I do that again?
Yo. Yes. Okay. And I'm now when you just said that, I can think of all the times when I butt heads with NE users where I want to go back to the same concept, the same formula.
Now we already did that. Why are you doing that shit again?
And I was like, no, because it's not the same, because we're not. I bring up Key and Peele a lot. Every Key and Peele sketch is the same. Every Key and Peele sketch is the same. They're all 2.5 to 3.5 minutes long. They all have the same structure. They all do the same thing. And they're totally, because I think they're both on our axis. There is a formula for what makes a bulletproof, perfect sketch.
Right. Until all of a sudden, until that NI formula has been used so much that the SE becomes SI, and then the INE users take that SI and they're like, well, this is boring. Let's throw some shit at it. And then they subvert those expectations and take it to a whole new place.
Right. And then
the NITE users will start reproducing it. And
then we're like, oh my God, Bo Burnham's doing the book. Okay. And then now to bring it back to Bo and Pete Holmes and all these, I'm going to stick with Bo and Pete because they're officially typed. But
what's his type?
So Pete Holmes is the audio version of Bo Burnham. They're type twins.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. But now Bo Burnham has done the Bo Burnham thing enough over the years that my NI can start to kind of see where some of the stuff is going.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And even if I don't know even if I can't guess at all of the sensory, I can be like, oh, I kind of, yes. Right. He's going to do
right here that he's going to drop a joke or
he's going to drop a joke, and then he's going to do this, and he's going to probably play with something, and it's okay. This is feeling familiar, which means he's setting us up. Yep. There it is.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, I mean, there really is, I see a lot of symbiosis.
Yeah, of course. Of course. You can't have one without the other. Like, Beau's style of comedy wouldn't work if there weren't the Hasan Minhajes of the world who are doing the kind of comedy that he does, which is probably, I imagine, fairly formulaic. And Beau is looking at something like that, and he's like, oh, okay, so there's a formula here, there's a formula here. Like, he's seeing all of the different things, and he's like, okay, let's fuck around with it a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
He has a great, and you can see this also in his directing work. He directed a special, a comedy special by a guy named Gerard Carmichael, and it is genuinely unlike any other comedy special you will ever watch. If you want to understand how any subverts expectations, because it's just weird. Like, there's no, it's not like live at the Apollo and the shots of the audience. Like, again, there's a very much a formula for how stand-up comedy specials are filmed. Mm-hmm. And Beau looked at that and was like, we need to question this premise.
We need to his new one.
I have not seen his new one. I've heard it's incredible.
It's in the same way that have you seen 8th Grade? The movie that he did, which is an incredible movie. Like, if you want to understand what it's like to be an 8th grader right now, like, go watch that movie. Yeah. And then afterwards, like, you know, give yourself a week to recover from the anxiety that you experienced for an hour. It's so good. It's one of the best movies I've watched that I will never watch again.
Yep.
Like, but in that same way, the comedy special that he just dropped on Netflix is like, he tried to give you the feeling of being stuck in your home for a year during the pandemic.
Yeah.
He did it so well. Like, I couldn't finish it because I was like, okay, this is a little too much for me right now. I'm going to get back to you, okay?
Yeah.
You know, and he's really, really good at that. And it was all just, it very much has that, like, YouTuber, I did it in my room vibe, which is exactly what he did do. He went back to his roots.
Right. Yeah. Well, and, you know, I think that somebody like Beau, the reason that there is no shortage of lead consume INFPs trying to do cool, wacky shit on YouTube. Right?
Yeah, of course.
The reason that I think his shit works is because he grounds himself not in the concept, not in the formula, but in the specific, you know, to use 8th Grade as an example, the scene with her being dropped off after going to the mall with an older boy. That is an incredibly specific, grounding, gritty, sensory thing.
Right.
That it's like, oh, there actually is, okay, this isn't just Chaos Monkey Land. We're not just making some weird art house movie.
Right.
I understand.
It has FI heart.
It has FI heart, and it's also like, I understand the world that this exists in.
Okay.
Okay. So what I mean by that is, when you, what's another movie off the top of your head besides 8th Grade?
Just any movie?
Any movie.
Avengers.
Great. Okay. So Avengers. The Avengers world has rules, right? That our NI is like, okay, so in the Avengers world, people can just get thrown across a city and be fine.
Of course.
Those are the rules of the world. That's what the NI user is looking for as being stable, as being grounding, as like what is predictable, what is known, right? But there's also a lot of very tangible, known information things in the sensory. Vibranium being a thing.
Okay.
Vibranium being what Captain America's shield is made out of.
Right.
You know, Stark Industries, whatever, this and that, like, and so the the SI user needs all of those very concrete, sensory, predictable things so that their any imagination can go wherever it wants to go.
Right. Yeah. Totally with you on that. And it's one of those. So how all of this came, like, one night, quite a few months back, I think I might have texted you, like, right when it happened. It was, I was going to sleep and failing to fall asleep, as I often do because I have insomnia.
Sure.
And where my brain goes when I go to sleep is to sleep. So I start NIFI running through scenarios in my head. So I start NI running through scenarios in my head of FI things that I either FI want to experience, like, or important to me, or whatever it is, or I'll maybe start running through TE things and, like, trying to problem solve whatever else might be going on, right?
Sure.
And it was in one of those moments where, as I was running through, like, say, I don't remember what was happening. I was imagining a conversation with someone or something like that, right? And as I'm running through that simulation in my head, I'm like, okay, say this. No, wait, that doesn't work. Okay, how about this? No, that doesn't work. And I'm like, it's like a Rolodex of sensory that I'm just, like, flipping through until I find the sensory that fits within this NI thing that I'm trying to create with my, like, this NI that I'm trying to give to my FI, right?
Right.
So, and I think largely because of meditation, as I was in that moment, I got kind of meta about my thoughts, and I was just like, wait a second. And then that's when it all kind of clicked, where, like, okay, so NESI users wouldn't be Rolodexing through the sensory in that way. They'd be Rolodexing through the concepts. Yes. And they would instead, where I am thinking about what could happen, looking to the future, I imagine are looking at, okay, so this is what did happen. And maybe, like, I don't know, thinking back to an interaction I had with you and going through and, like, okay, maybe this is what he was thinking. This is what he was thinking. This is what he was thinking. Or, like, all of these, or I don't really know, like, conceptual things, and they'll be Rolodexing through those. And it's not until the sensory actually occurs that any of that NE can be grounded.
Right.
And it's because of that I kind of, like, so the 4 observers, I think of them as, so SI is what happened, and E is what is happening, and E is what could happen, and I is what will happen.
Right.
And I think the reason for that is because, like, how do you ground what could happen? You ground it with what actually did happen, right? How do you ground what will happen? You ground it with what is happening, right? Because you can't predict what will happen if you don't know what is happening right now. And that's kind of, anyway, yes.
No, that makes a lot of sense. You know, there's the whole to get real NF hippy dippy on it.
Find out your NF.
I heard a lovely analogy about, again, this kind of falls apart if you know anything about actual billiards. So, like, this is very much a play along kind of analogy. So a billiard ball on a frictionless surface is just kind of bouncing around.
For those who don't know, it's also a pool ball. I don't know.
Well, yes, same.
Yeah, pool billiards, yeah, I don't know.
Billiards, yes. It's just going to go in one direction.
Okay.
Unless...
On a frictionless surface.
On a frictionless surface.
Okay, cool.
Right? Infinitely long frictionless surface. It's just going to go in one direction. Unless it gets hit by another ball.
Right.
Right? So I very much see NI and SE doing that. How do we know what will happen? We have to look at what is going, what is happening
right now. Yeah.
Right now, in the moment, this ball is headed in this direction.
Right.
So most likely the NISE user's favorite phrase, most likely it's gonna keep going in this direction.
Right. And it goes right back to that earlier point where, like, the gathering function isn't just gathering, it's gathering all of it, right? Because you can't say with confidence that it will continue going in that direction unless you know all of the sensory. And if you know all of the sensory, then you'll know that, oh, there's another ball on the table and it's going in this direction as well. And then maybe it'll they'll bump or something like that.
Right,
You know?
maybe they'll, and that's where, again, where the NI gets too detached is like all it sees are like the billiard ball or the pool balls moving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but they don't have the in the moment sensory data of like, oh no, this pool ball is moving really fast. It's gonna hit this other one.
Yeah.
Right? They just, the NI can get very like, well, in theory, it could murder. I don't know. Right?
Yes.
Without actually respecting it, I guess what I'm getting at is
the NI user will see the balls on the surface. The SE or the NI savior will see the balls on the surface.
Yeah.
The SE savior will be like, oh, you don't see that it's wet right there? That's not going to go how you think it's going to go. Or
right. It's like, no. You don't understand, NI user. There's a huge oil slick in the middle that's going to make me speed up.
Yeah.
That's gonna throw me off course. Well, from up here, if nothing happens, it should keep. Okay. Yes, I hear you. There's an oil slick literally right in front of me that's gonna trip me up.
Yep.
So fucking factor that into whatever equation you know.
Yes.
There's an oil slick here. And then, that's where like the NI user will feel stupid and be like, huh, that's weird. That ball just like veered off to the other side.
How did that happen?
Shocker.
Yes.
Shocker that we got off track.
Missed the SE. Whoops.
Right.
Zoe wrote something that makes a lot of sense. To know what will happen, you need a lot of SE data points about what is happening right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. To know what could happen, you only need a single SI example of it happening.
Yes.
Oh, that's a really excellent point. Yeah. Because as soon as you're like, oh, okay, this could happen. It happened once before. And hey, it might happen again. You don't know. Right. And SINE user will be like, nah, NI user, you don't actually know what the fuck you're talking about. This could happen, or this could happen, or this could happen. And the NI user will be like, no, this is most likely what's going to happen. And then when the NE user is right, the NI user is like, oh, fuck.
Right. And again, that's where you get that really interesting interplay, because one of them is going to be right.
Yes.
Right?
Or both of them can be wrong, actually.
Right? Okay, sure. But like, if let's say the NE user sees 72 possibilities, and the NI user sees 3.
Right.
If it's one of those 3, the NI user is going to feel real good about themselves. You just wasted all of that energy gathering all of these possibilities when I could have told you the 3 most likely.
Right.
And then when it isn't one of the 3 most likely, all the NE user feels real good. And they're like, ha, see, I told you that could have happened. And the NI users, theoretically should be like, you know what? You got me. Touche.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's like, I think you had a good point where the NI user will be like, oh, I don't need to gather all of this NE. I know the 3 most likely, like, they're 1, 2, 3 here, and then everything else, the possibilities are down here. Why bother? And the flip side of that is I think SI users see the SE that way. It's like, why are you gathering all of this SE? These 3 pieces of SI are the only things that are relevant here. This is the only SI that everything else is just overwhelming noise. Whereas for us, all of that overwhelming noise is our experience. It's what we seek out because we want to gather all of it. Whereas for the SI users, like, no, that's too much. I don't need this much sensory, which is why actually SI users, even with Demon SE, like an IJ like you, you're going to be way more in the sensory than an SI user will be.
Yes.
You'll be way more likely to try new things, try new foods or things like that than an SI user, because SI user they're overwhelmed by new sensory.
Right.
That we're overwhelmed by new concepts.
Yeah. Well, and it makes me think of like the office lady trope is a trope for or the librarian or the whatever, right? The lead SI nebbish glasses archetype, right?
Mm-hmm.
It took me a really long time to actually figure this out, but so I worked with a lot of SI users at my old job, and I couldn't quite figure out like office lady culture at first, and how they would get really, really locked in and fastidious about random dumb sensory shit, right? And random dumb sensory parts of the process. This is not a thing that really happened, but like the example of like, well, but all of the memos are blue. We have to use blue paper for the memos.
Right.
We can't use pink paper. The pink paper is for yearly reviews. And if we print a memo on a paper with the yearly review, then it won't be, no, the memos have to be blue.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, what the fuck? But I get it.
Yes, because it's sensory.
And it is precisely that grounding in the sensory that lets their brain actually think of cool new shit, or to be able to process, ooh, it's a memo. I know it's blue. What could be on the memo? And it opens up their brain because they have that sensory concrete
grounding it. Yes.
Whereas for me, I'm like, okay, it's a comedy movie, right? Well, it's kind of a comedy and kind of no. Give me a bucket. Is it a comedy or is it a drama? I will consume the shit out of it. But I need to know what lane it's. I need to know what category it's in, so that I can feel open and free enough to experience it for what it is.
Wait, say that again.
Okay, so
NI above it's SE.
Right. So my NI needs to know what category something is in, so that my SE can fully experience it. I need some sort of
that makes sense.
A conceptual frame of reference. It's not. I don't need to know who's in, unless it's like, oh, it's a Denzel movie. Right now, that's a concept. But I don't need to know that. I don't need to know who's in it. I don't need to know what city it takes place in. I don't need to know any of that. Give me the category: comedy or drama.
Yes. And yeah. I'm with you on that. And I think that's also, so one of the things that I've noticed from the NI saviors in my life is that, so like SC at the top, right? You surprise me, I'm so fucking happy, right? Because I love surprises. Ooh, new sensory. Ooh, I didn't expect this. Hell yeah. Right? NI saviors kind of the opposite. But if they know what bucket it's in, then they're okay with it. Like if I am like planning something for a friend who's an NI savior, and I prepare them, like they don't need to know the nitty gritty details. Right. I prepare them that like, hey, we're planning an outing on Saturday. Expect this kind of thing. You won't know the details. Then they can be like, oh, okay, they can settle into that, because that's in their NI bucket.
Yes. And crucially, I am totally fine with a change of plans, change of concept, change whatever. Right. As long as it's changing from something to something, right? So as long as so in the comedy drama example, right? If they're like, you know what? I don't know. I see it as, okay, I'm going to, another random movie called Don't Think Twice. It's about an improv comedy troupe. It's a comedy. It's a drama about comedy, a comedy drama, whatever. It's great. It's really, really good.
Okay.
If somebody says to me, like, I think it's a drama. My NI thinks that it's a drama. If somebody told me it was a comedy, I would not be mad about it.
Okay.
Because I would have been like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting. Fair enough. They must have had a different opinion. Whatever. What fucks me up as an NI user is when it's like, well, I don't know. It could be a this, and it's kind of a that, and no. Pick a lane.
How are we friends? No.
pick a lane and to let it be wrong. I'm fine with it being wrong.
Right. As
I
long as there's some kind of conceptual jumping off point to compare to.
Right. And being like, okay, I see why you would call this a comedy. I disagree, but you were not wrong to have said that. I kind of get it. Fine.
Yeah.
Because again, at least you gave me some concept to hold on to. And I think with an SI user, and certainly the SI users in my life, being able to give them a sensory detail about it, be like, okay, Fast and the Furious. Oh, no, it's dope. It's like there's like action, there's romance, there's whatever. If like let's say somebody has no idea what the Fast and Furious series is about, right? If I'm like,
been living in a hole.
It's a movie about cars. Cars do car things. Focus on the cars. Right?
SI users.
Right, for the SI user. My suspicion, doing the math on it, is that the SI user would be like, okay, I'm going to see a movie about cars.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it turns out it's about so much more. It's about family and all the things. Then it's like, okay, yeah, I can appreciate all of the other things, because when I get lost, again, this is whether you're lead NE, lead SE, it doesn't fucking matter. Whenever you get lost, you need whatever your OI is to come back to.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't, whether
NI, SI doesn't matter. Right.
Right. And you'll see it. I mean, you'll see it really overtly in someone like me, because I have learned to ask for what I need. Be like, no. You got to give me something. If you still want it to be a surprise, that's fine. But you got to say, like, we're going to see a show, or we're going to see a concert. Something.
Right.
Right. Yeah. You can't just say, I remember my parents were like, this was, I don't know, 20 years ago. And they were like, hey, I have a surprise for all of us. We're going to go do something fun tonight. They told me this at 3 p.m. We're leaving at 6, and it's going to be a surprise. I'm not going to tell you what it is. And I'm like, please tell me what it is. Like, no, but we want it to be a surprise. And I was like, no, you don't understand. If I don't have any frame of reference, because I don't have any past sensory, I'm in now.
Right.
We're in now.
Right.
I'm not gonna go back and think, okay, when the last time they did something like this, they did this. Okay, so it could be that again, or it also could be, no, I don't have any of that. I need something to converge my thinking.
Right.
And to converge, to use your word, my perception of what is happening in the here and now / the immediate future.
And that'll help you feel comfortable in your saviors. And as Jessica put it, she learned that firsthand. You need something to ground things.
You're not wrong. Not wrong.
I've learned that about the NI users in my life as well.
Right?
Fun fucking with them sometimes.
Yep. Now, on the flip side, you'll see the NI users, or to bring it more broad, the OI users, our sensory, or our OI, whether it's SI or NI, sensory, the concept, the whatever, will be very obvious, right? Whether it's in a sort of, what's the guy's name from Office Space who's like, no, but I need my red stapler. I need my red stapler to do my job, right? Again, it's a comedy. Okay, well, there was, Stephen Root was the, I don't remember his name. But anyway, it was a whole thing of like, they wanted to take away his red stapler.
And he needed his red stapler. Right? That's the other thing with SI.
Right.
It's not just that the memo is blue or the stapler is red. It's the sensory is personal. It's mine.
Yes.
And SINE users are usually the ones who will be into collectibles or figurines or like, hey, this is this historic item that was in this place and these people touched it and look at all of this history that it has.
Right.
And SINE users, that's like stupidly valuable because this is history. This is actually what happened and you're in it and jump off from it. Whereas for us, it's like, I don't know, it's the bell. Okay.
Well, and here's the thing, like I definitely collect shit. But for me, whenever I collect something, I just want all of it, right? I want the full set.
Yes.
Right? It's not personal. It's not, I don't need this specific whatever from the whatever. It's like, oh, I want, I don't know. Just give me the whole fork set. I don't give a shit. Whatever.
So like every other person, pandemic, kind of started trying to develop my green thumb. Doesn't really exist, right? But I like to cook. I have some herbs that I started growing, right? But just having one or two herbs.
Cooking some herbs. I know how you get down.
I'm in California. I can go down. I can have that delivered so easily. No, but like, so growing a couple herbs, right? But the impulse is, like Jessica just said, got to catch them all. I don't want just cilantro. I want all the herbs I could possibly use. Like, if I'm going to grow herbs, then I just want all of them.
I want all of the herbs.
That's a weird thing. Like, I'm not going to fucking use like tarragon. Why do I need tarragon? But I bought it.
Right. Well, and especially at first, we just want all of the things.
Right.
Once we have all of the things, so I'm really bad at starting with one thing. So you can't tell on StreamYard because I'm using a webcam and I apologize for the white balance. It's terrible, but I'm setting up like an actual good looking studio to film YouTube videos and self-tapes and whatever. And my impulse is to be like, right off the bat,
buy all the things, set up.
Like, okay, well, first I need a tripod, and I need a new camera, and I need a microphone, and I need a new light, and I need a new this, and I need a new that. And then I have to stop myself and be like, calm down, Sparky. Money is a thing. Step one, do some consume, do your market research. But then, the way that it's set up now, I have what was a mic stand that like clamps onto a table. I still have that. I already gathered it. I don't need
this new thing. Right. I don't need a new thing.
I don't need the new thing.
Right.
And it's not even, I need to repurpose or find a clever way to, no, motherfucker, you literally have the exact thing. And it's funny. I knew that I had this like boom tripod arm clamp thing. And I looked at it and I was like, that's not going to be good enough. And I went out to Sam Ash and bought another one that was bigger. I needed a different one.
So the other thing that's at play here is not just SE. Right. It's also that for you, your NITE is above your SETE. So whenever you are SETEing, before you get around to the SETE, you run through the scenarios in your head, you run through the simulation in your head of NITE. What could I need? How will this work? All of that. And so you anticipate, right, using that NI like, oh, I'll probably need this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody who is play above blast, everything else the same, but play above blast, they'll be just like, I'll just throw this together. I'll throw this together, because after they play, then they whittle down into the NI and kind of like, whereas when your NI is above your SE, for us, for both of us, actually, our NITE is above our SETE, right? So when it comes to TE things,
oh shit!
Hang
on, wait, I have to pause for a second.
Okay.
Because I need to process that. For both of us, we are both blast above. Holy shit! I never
gonna fuck with your head further, because the flip side of that is also that for both of us, our consume is above our sleep.
I quit.
I feel like if there's a video where you don't quit, then I didn't do my job. What you thinking? Nice bracelets, by the way.
Thanks. In all the years we've known each other, I've never pieced that together.
It's only been a couple of years.
Holy shit. I apologize. Please continue.
So, I mean, if you look at Dave and Shan, for example,
Right.
they have the same thing going on where, thank you, Zoe.
What Zoe said.
I love seeing the lead SE beat the lead NI at noticing a pattern.
Touche. You got me. You got me.
What was it? I started saying something.
Yeah, Dave and Shan have the same thing going on.
Yes. So in the sense that like, they both have play above consume. For Shan, it's savior.
Right.
For Dave, it's demons. And then they also both have sleep above blast.
For Dave,
Shan,
it's
it's
a
a
savior.
demon, and for Dave, it's a savior, right?
It.
And so
War.
I think we really underestimate, and we're getting totally off of observers right now, but I think we underestimate how much animal order matters. Because one of the things that like for people who like us are in our quadra and have their consume above their sleep means that before we can ever get to any kind of sleep, we need to experience the thing, right? We cannot start NIFIing. We cannot start running through simulations of what might be important to us until we have sensorily experienced it. But for at TE things, it's the exact opposite, where for TE things, we don't bother dealing with it in the sensory until we have run through it in our minds and we have a rough idea of how it all works together and comes together.
Why you do these?
It's why you love me. It's also why we don't do these too often.
Oh my God. Okay. Okay, so to tie that into kind of what we've been talking about, the reason that my head is so fucked with right now is because you forced my NI to question a premise.
Which
is that the order of, so like blast above consume matters, play above sleep matters.
Right.
For instance.
Yes.
And that, I know that it's sort of been talked about, you know, the blast above play and whatever, but I never really thought of the implications of that or how it could manifest, how it could affect communication style, dynamics, whatever. And the reason that you're seeing like steam coming out of my fucking ears right now is because my NI is like, shit, I now have to move my known NI pattern to fit the new sensory, like I have to move my known information.
Right.
Right? I have to reframe my entire perception.
So this is like, we talked about this on the sleep episode when we talked about sleep, how sleep is this, you have this network graph, right? And one of the nodes changes, then you have to re-update your whole graph. You have to re-update that mind map in your head of how everything is connected, right? That doesn't just apply to NIFI, that applies to NITE as well.
Yeah.
So as NITE users, we have somewhere in our head a map of how a flow chart,
Sure.
of how things work, right? So when some kind of sensory comes in to indicate that, hey, this doesn't work the way that you think it does, and you need to update that map because there's all of these things that are attached to this thing over here. And now you're like, oh, this isn't shit. Okay, all of these things are now like, where do I attach them? Do they attach? Do I throw out this concept? Like, and we have to update that map.
Yeah.
And I think for for NESI users, so for us, it's flowcharts. I think for NESI users, one of the reasons why it's like things like lists and manuals and like systematic SI, because it's also kind of a very similar process where when something changes, whether it's a concept or some sensory that actually happened, They
Right.
need to update that because then it's no longer true,
Right.
right?
I
So
think,
for
yeah.
example, if memos can now be blue or pink, then that needs to be updated everywhere because now that is a new standard. That's a
Mhm.
new norm. And
Yeah.
that will affect all of the NE that can be gathered based on this sensory.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think of an SI user, I think of my grandfather. He was a printer. And by printer, I mean old school printing press printer.
Damn. Yeah, that is some SI work.
Did it for 50 years.
Holy
And
shit.
Now, he was bonkers good at it. He ended up getting super screwed because he was so all in on his SI
Yeah.
that he just he couldn't see any trend coming. Like even in the 70s when Xerox was doing their thing and what digital things started to exist.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, nope, I know how to do it this way. This is how I do it. And it was
done.
This is how it is always done. And, in his later, so he was always been very political. And he was a Republican and a conservative. That was like a big personal part of his identity.
Mm-hmm.
And because again, he was a Republican when Eisenhower was a Republican. And it was fine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And in his later years, not just his identity, but the label of Republican was so he didn't know how to, because he's like, if I update this, even if it isn't what he believed, he was white and he has a grandson who is very much not white and is very brown and very much looks like the scary people on Fox News.
Oh, right. You're so scary.
Okay. It's pink cursive. Okay.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Now you're a lot less scarier.
Right.
Before, it was the hat that, oh, wait. Okay. You take the hat off and you actually get scary.
You're right.
I think you have the same haircut as me going on.
Right. But I bring,
Wait, your hair is curly. You should rock the curls. Get a Jon Snow look going. Okay. No.
I have tried to do the Jon Snow look and it just goes up and poof. It doesn't.
See the way of the curl if you want. Just put the hat back on, please.
You sure? You sure you don't like?
Jessica. What?
How's Jessica do?
My hair could do that too. I'm not gonna fuck it up though.
I love it. Putting that hat back.
I can't take you seriously. I see Sideshow Bob in my head.
Yeah. But for him, it wasn't his identity as a conservative that mattered so much. Because again, I think he was a double decider. Again, single observer, double decider in the middle. Mm-hmm. It was, well, if I can't call myself a Republican, if the label Republican, if I have to throw that out, I have no framework for how to experience the world. Right? Because if I have to update what Republican means, then I have to update what Democrat means, what liberal means, what conservative means. All of the entire manual is fucked.
Wait, so now I'm thinking this through. So if I have to update what a conservative is, I have to update who I am in this world. Is that what you said?
No. Well, kind of. Not really. I don't think that was his big problem.
Okay.
If we think of him as, so over the course of his, 80 plus years of life, right? He organically gathered experiences, whatever, but he was sort of building his SI box and filling it out and these are his definitions and this is how this connects to this and this connects but again, it was all very.
But it's not connections the way that it is for us. It's more like this sensory happened, this sensory happened, this
Right.
sensory happened, you know, like
Right.
based on all of these things, these are all the things that could happen, but
Exactly.
first, know what actually did happen.
Exactly. Right.
Right.
And he loves history. He's like, I need to know exactly what happened when.
Right.
And you know, if we had to stop getting him like contemporary history books because even though the sensory was the same, it was new sensory, it was different sensory. He's like, no, but that doesn't line up with what I know happened in 1941. I was 11 when Pearl Harbor was bombed. I think I'd fucking remember what happened because I was there.
Sounds like my dad.
Right? And so if he then has to call into question 30 years of conservative actions and behaviors and how Reagan treated gay people in the late 80s during the AIDS epidemic, like if he has to update his sensory about that, then he's like, okay, well then what? Now the entire house of cards,
the fundamental ability to rely on sensory, historical sensory, is undermined.
Right.
And then that means everything gets undermined.
Right.
Everything he's built his life on. Yeah, of course, that's a terrifying thing.
It's terrifying.
It's the way that, like, so,
I love this face. I live for this face.
Okay, so not in any way to get like into religion. This is just something that I want to see if this pattern will hold.
I love it.
What do you believe happens after we die?
I think that our energy gets. I'm a very okay. It's a slight spoiler. I'm very much a good place in that realm where when we die, the energy goes back into the universe.
Okay.
And it is the universe. I believe that there is a nexus of divinity.
Okay.
And that all of our energy is fundamentally connected divinely. And so when we die, our energy just gets put back into the nexus and dispersed in the interest of the best and highest good for all. Okay.
Cool. That makes sense. That's a very NIFI idea right there. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've noticed is, so among the many conversations I've had on the subject, when I talk to friends who believe that we come from nothing and go to nothing, who are NI saviors, I'm fucking terrified by that concept. They're like in their core.
Oh yeah, no, what?
Terrified by it. And for me, it's something that's like, well, yeah, whatever. That's no big deal, right? And it was only after ops that it started making sense, because what is more terrifying to an NI savior than the fact that there is nothing connecting everything, that it's all just a fluke of circumstance and chaotic sensory?
No.
Right? That is absolutely terrifying to an NI user or to an NI savior. To an SC savior, that's like, well, yeah, of course, no biggie, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's one of those things that when I've seen my NI friends, NI savior friends, struggling with that concept and trying to rebuild because it is such a core idea, that they then have to rebuild how everything, their whole fundamental paradigm, because of this thing. In the same way that when you were talking about your grandpa, like, you know, if this is not what a Republican is, then I have to change everything and how I can rely on this information.
Right. Or even, you know, even if it's like, let's say the stuff that he logged, right, about, I'm just going to use Reagan as another, you know, as an example again. If he only logged the good things that Reagan did, or, I don't know, people who looked like him, people in his general socioeconomic strata, right? If that's all that he logged, and then he is then told, oh yeah, you can't rely on that sensory data that you logged, that's flawed data.
Right.
He's like, what do you, no, but I logged it myself.
Right.
I wrote it down. I have receipts. I wrote down the things. I logged Reagan did this, and then Reagan did this, and then Reagan did this, and these were all great things.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, okay, but also, and then me, the SE user, is like, let me just dump some sensory onto your book of like the crack epidemic and AIDS and all the ways in which he continued to disenfranchise people. And my grandfather, the SI savior, is like, I don't know what the fuck you want me to do. I can't archive this. I can't archive it now.
Yeah.
Because I didn't archive it then. I had to archive it then because that's when you can't, nope, done. And it's that same level of like existential, like terror.
Yes, it is. And I think that happens with not only our demons, but also the other accesses. Right?
Yeah.
Because like, I mean, Jessica just jumped in with, to be honest though, that's absolutely terrifying to me and was one of the legs of my phobia of death infinity. I've had it since I was a kid. So I'm assuming she was talking about when I gave the example.
Yeah.
We come from nothing. So like, I mean, to the point that she's making is that like, it's not a fear that only NI users have. I think anything that fundamentally shifts in any way, especially if it's coming from a demon, that shifts how we have built our perception of the world, is a scary thing. And that is exactly, I think, why observers are tied to fear and deciders are tied to pain.
Yes.
Right? Because it's our observations that are like scary, that like our observations don't bring pain. It's experiences it's decisions that bring pain.
Right. Well, and to flip it around, on the savior OE side, right? We've been talking a lot about how like the savior OIs, when our world gets wrecked, we're like, bah.
Yeah.
But also that can also happen to the lead OEs.
Yeah, of course.
When you wreck a lead OE's OI box, it's not that it's necessarily more terrifying, but I think it's important to remember that lead OE people still have an OI box.
Yes, absolutely.
And still very much have their OI box of shit that they need to rely on to get through the day. Yes. Right?
Because we all have all the functions and we all do all the things.
Right.
Without a doubt. One of the things that a struggle I've been having is this. So for a very long time, travel was my like antidepressant, right? I would go someplace new. I would go try new foods, experience new cultures, new people, all of that jazz, right? Mm-hmm. It stopped working when I had that sensory experience so many times that I NITE'd it and I could see everything that happens and everything was just copy and paste, right? And there's nothing more soul crushing to an SE than the idea that there might not be new sensory for me to consume, right? Once sensory is mapped to an NITE, like it's boring.
Right. And it's not that it's not literally new sensory, but once your NI can jump in and be like, oh yeah, no, that's probably going to be like this, Bali and Borneo, that's all going to, or whatever. Once your NI starts,
and it's not SC really,
right? Then it's like that. Well, and here's the thing: what's tough, and I get this to an extent as well because my NI is single activated, so I can somewhat kind of feel it's attached to my last animal. My NI will get really excited, but like, oh my god, I can see the future! Yay! Especially when it's in the NF realm, and my SETE is like, dude, why? Why do you have to ruin my SETE fun by knowing where this is gonna go? Can't we just? Can't I just play? Can't I just?
I think you just summarized my love life over the past 15, 20 years. My NIFI being like, oh no, this is gonna go this way, this is gonna go this way. Oh, don't even bother over there. And my SCTE being like, but I want cuddles. It sucks. It sucks. Also, Lindsay's on, and it's really lovely to see her.
Lindsay. Hi, Lindsay.
Yeah, I haven't talked to her in a while, and thank you. But it's one of those things that, like, it fucking sucks in that regard. I wish I was like Dave and Shan, you know, early ops days, they talked about how, like, no, you're gonna hate your type and you're gonna end up loathing your saviors. And I'm just like, ugh, preach. Because there are times when without a doubt, I love my type, and I think there are some really wonderful advantages to my type and to the saviors that I have. But I'm so fucking done with being addicted to FI, to being obligated to that FI, to being obligated to that NIFI, because it gets in the way of me being able to do the shit that I want to be doing, you know, such as dating, like SCTE dating. Like, even though my NIFI can be like, yeah, that's not what you want right now, trust me. My SCTE will be like, but it feels good. I want.
Yeah.
Not even I want, because it's TE, but yeah.
No, I definitely see what you mean. And I think that's, you know, to sort of tie in all of the stuff about the observer thing, right? I think that the key to any growth is step one, letting go of the perception of obligation. Now, let me caveat that.
Yes, please do.
Let me caveat this. I'm not talking about kids. I'm not talking about like when like you're obligated to like
external obligations,
like staying alive, and you know, if you're a parent, you can't just like abandon your child, and right, you can't.
Yeah.
So I want to be very clear that I am not endorsing that sort of a thing. But this idea of like addicted to our saviors and being caught in these Groundhog Day, what's the other Boss Level, new Hulu movie? If you have Hulu and you want to watch Groundhog Day but want it to be super violent, check that one out.
What is it called?
It's called Boss. It's called Boss Level.
Okay, cool. Anyway, yeah.
Anyway, the way to break those cycles is to break the. It's not. I don't think, at least has not been the case for me. I don't think the problem is addiction to saviors. I think the problem is addiction to the feeling of obligation. And being addicted to this paradigm of like, well, I have to go through the world in a certain way. Whether it's for comfort or whether it's for this, rather than looking at the current situation and being, okay, what's the right tool for the job right now?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't have to use a hammer. I don't have to use a screwdriver. I have to use some tool because I'm in the moment, but I'm not attached to any particular tool, any particular savior, any particular function. That's the sort of non-attachment that I think is really, really helpful.
I'm not sure if I agree with that, but I think I'm gonna have to sleep on it a little bit.
I'd be curious. The only reason I bring it up is because that was such a big key for me, because it actually let me feel like I could be much more generous in my everyday life, and it let me see the world as and myself as being extraordinarily abundant. When I wasn't in this mode of, well, what function should I be using? What function am I more comfortable using? What function do I think I have to use to get the job done?
Right.
Detaching entirely from any sort of should, have to, whatever, like even to the point of removing them from my internal vernacular.
Right.
It has helped me tremendously go, oh my God, there are resources everywhere. I can just be present, do what needs to be done, with no attachment to what I did in the past, what I will be doing in the future. I can just be present and make good, healthy, productive, wise, generous, benevolent decisions for myself and for others.
Right. But what's the mechanism for making those decisions?
The mechanism for making those decisions is, it actually goes back to what you said earlier. Everyone has every function. Everyone can do everything.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right. But the way to see every function as being equal is just getting rid of should and getting rid of, like, again, even to the point of, if you catch yourself saying should, be like, nope. There's no should. There's only what needs to be done. There's only what serves.
Do you know what should is?
What is should?
Should is DE. And why this is a big thing for you is because getting rid of should means getting rid of your obligation to DE. In this case, TE.
Well, see, I think that can also be to FI. Well, I should feel good all the time. Or
no,
whatever.
Because, and this is one of the things that's been like my magic bullet, so to speak, is reframing my shoulds into it is important to me. Because the second that I reframe it into it is important, it's directly into my FI. And if I can't reframe a should into it is important to me, then I shouldn't do it. Then I don't do it. You know what I mean? Mind you, I'm not effective with this, like effective as in I'm not doing it all the time, but it's something a practice I'm trying to build. But shoulds is very much a DE thing, because should is a expectation of some point. Should means that, like, there is an expectation that I'm trying to meet, right? Where are those expectations coming from if not from the tribe, right? They might be coming from you internally in terms of, like, I want to be at this place, right?
Yeah.
But then I want to be at this place. I should be at this place. You reframe into it is important to me to be in this place. Then it goes back to your FI, right? And then also answer the question of why is it important for you to be in that place? Or I should be at this place, or I want to be at this place. Why? Because everyone else is there, or something like that. Or because at this place I will.
I mean, that right there, that's a very DE.
Yeah, exactly.
Of the
should by and large is a very DE statement. And if you reframe it into, so the point I'm trying to make is not in any way that I disagree with what you were saying in terms of getting rid of obligations, but why this has been so powerful for you is because your sense of should is the thing that is driving your actions. Because even though you're an IJ, you're a mini EJ, right? You have more power. In the same way that for me, my FI and getting my FI to just shut the fuck up for 1 second, just nearly impossible, to the point where, like, so Brian and I were talking a while back, and I don't think Brian's really active on the Facebook group anymore. So for anyone who's watching, Brian is your double feminine twin, right? Brian and I were talking a little while back, and there was something that I was trying to convey in the sense of my mind as a savior FI and double activated savior FI. So I'm like more IP problems than EP problems, right?
Right, sure.
My brain never, ever stops evaluating things for priority, right? So one of the reasons why when the observers or the deciders, when they triangulate, it's a beautiful, powerful thing. But when they're in conflict with each other, we go to our savior, right? So when my brain is constantly saying, this is important, this is important, this is not important, oh, but this is more important than this, oh, you should go for this, you should, oh, this is more important, this is more important. My brain is doing every single sensory experience that comes through me. My brain is evaluating it for priority. So where the fuck does how things work step into that, right? When like, so for example, today I got hit by some just like really bad cramps, right? First day of my period, bad cramps, I'm borderline anemic, so my iron dropped, and I was just feeling like shit. And all I wanted to do was curl up in a ball and just hide from the world. And everything in me was screaming to do that. I also postponed on you twice for recording this. So there was, but there was this sense of like, I don't want to do it again, right? I don't want to postpone again. And there's this element of like, this is what TE should be done. But my FI is screaming at me to just, and especially in my sleep, like hit the brakes, just go take care of yourself, like all of that, right? My FI was screaming at me to do that. And the challenge was in telling my FIs like, yeah, I understand that's important to you right now. This is also important. We're going to do this, right? You know, and the TE that was kind of, but that's the thing. It wasn't the TE that was making the decision, because ultimately I will still do what my FI does.
Right.
The trick is brainwashing yourself into using your FI to do the TE thing.
Yes.
But the point of all of that is that, well, 2 points. One, that friction between the two, right? When they're at odds, we go to our savior. And that sense of should, or what you were articulating as that, like letting go of the obligations, is part of your hero's journey. It's not part of my hero's journey, because it's not something that part of my hero's journey is allowing those obligations to drive more of my decision making instead of always doing what FI feels nice.
I got it. Okay. I see what you mean. Okay. Yep, that makes sense. I think that in a lot, I think that we're mostly aligned conceptually.
Yeah, I think so.
I think we are. I think it's a language thing that's making us.
I mean, I think the obligation thing is really very important for DE saviors.
Okay.
You let go of that sense of obligation that you feel. For DI saviors, nah, girl, go into that obligation a bit. You can do a little more. You can feel a little more obligated to the people around you. Don't, like, instead of like, I rescheduled on you last week because of really bad SF reasons, right? But it was totally an FI decision, 100% FI.
Yeah.
It wasn't TE in any way.
Yeah. Fair enough.
There have been a couple of comments. I just wanted to go through them, but
yeah. Hit me.
Zoe says, I agree. I think the reason I struggle with my last animal because I feel obligated to my savior animals. Like my last animal is a bad thing to do most of the time. Yeah, I get that. And so that's the other thing. I think we are using obligation in two different ways.
Yes, that's sort of what I was getting at.
Yes. So there is obligation in the sense of like we feel obligated to our saviors.
Yeah,
and I would reframe that as we get a dopamine hit when we take responsibility for our saviors.
Sure.
Right? So so that sense of responsibility for our saviors, like, how would I be happy? I would be happy if I could SCFI, NIFI all day long and never have to worry about anything else. Maybe every now and then drop into my blast, have some fun chatting with somebody, and then that's it, right? How would you be happy if you could just blast play all the time, and if your SCFI and your sleep was just settled and you knew what you NIFI wanted from your life, and then you just went and threw all your blast play at it? Like,
that sounds terrifying,
right? Like our
dopamine. No, that sounds terrifying. Well,
I mean, that's what you did when you were living in New York, right?
Oh,
you had
sure.
an NIFI concept, you locked onto it, and then you were doing it. You were off.
Yep. But now having gone through the processing and seeing, like, I actually, like, I'm starting to get dopamine hits from the demons, and it's pretty dope.
Yes. And so that's one of the things that I don't know if Dave and Shannon ever talk about, but there's when we do our demons, we also get a huge dopamine hit, without a doubt.
Yeah.
The challenge is when we fuck up with our demons, we can't handle that negativity. Like if I make a prediction and my prediction is right, I'm like, yeah, girl, I got this. I know what I'm doing. If I make a prediction and it's wrong, I won't predict something again for a long time because I can't deal with the negativity of being wrong in that demon. Whereas if I gather some sensory and I missed something, I'm like, oh, whoops, no biggie, right? Whereas if you went through and you did the consume and you missed something, you're like, motherfucker, I even did the consume. Like, and I still missed it, because that's the way that we are with our demons.
Yeah, I will say the pandemic definitely evened me out in that respect a lot.
Well, one of the things I actually noticed is a lot of my TE savior friends have felt relief with the pandemic, because one of the things with TE is the obligation to the tribe. And if you're stuck at home, you're not tribing as much, which means you actually have a chance to talk to your FI, to talk to your DI and be like, hey, what's up? It's been a while. What are you?
Yeah. And being able to not like, I go from, rather than being like rage, like setting up this YouTube channel, being like, oh my God, I even did the consume. I didn't want to, but I did it and I still fucked it up. Now it's a lot more like, there's more there than I thought. Damn. All right.
Well, for one thing, I think that's awesome. Another, I wonder how true that is. I have no doubt that that's when your brain picks up. But if the people around you, if they were like, oh, the times that Raja freaks out of like the 10 times, the 10 most recent times that you freaked out, almost all of them have to do with your demons. Right? Like we rarely freak out over our saviors.
Oh, sure. I think I just freak out less.
Yeah, hopefully. After 2 years of ops, I hope
certainly the times that I freak out, totally demon related.
Oh yeah.
No question. But the frequency of the freakouts and the intensity and the duration of the freakouts
and how quickly we go through them.
Right. And certainly since the pandemic has been like, well, fair enough. That's
yes. And there's a couple of things. We've been talking for an hour and a half. We should probably start winding down.
Yeah.
But one of the things that comes up frequently is, so Dave and Chan talk about the alpha journey so much. They also talk about, so this was interesting. Josh called me the other day. You're a double feminine twin. He does pop into the group from time to time. Josh and Alex called me the other day and they're like, hey, we have a question. We thought you might have some insights. So Dave and Chan say that fear and pain is the only way to make it through your deathbed and be an alpha, right? And that you have to deal with fear and pain if you want to get to the other side of it. And I fundamentally disagree with that assertion. And I think it goes right back to that, like, if you want to be a leader, you got to do it with fear kind of thing. No, actually, like love and positive emotions are far more powerful, sustainable, and enduring. Yeah. And you are going into your journey, your alpha journey, and trying to deal with your demons because you are so afraid of your saviors. One thing that's going to lead to a sustainable kind of growth. Nope. I think the answer is you have to fall in love with your demons.
Yes.
Be so excited to do them with the same excitement that you have with doing your saviors.
Yes.
Part of that means that you got to practice the muscle of being wrong when you do your demons, and you got to make peace with that.
Yes. No, that's a whole other video about the fear and pain as the fundamental paradigm of growth and journey.
Ooh, and ownership. We should do a video on alpha-ness.
Yeah. I would not be upset about that. I would not be upset about that at all. But just to tie this off very briefly, it has been my experience and observation that love is far more sustainable than fear in every context.
And it's not just love. There's like curiosity.
Yes.
Awe. There's
reverence. Yes. Yes.
There's all of these amazing positive emotions that, I mean, like, you look at what someone will do out of fear for their life. Yes. But look at what someone will do, what a parent will do out of fear for their child, or what someone will do out of fear for a loved one. And both are stupidly impressive in terms of like human ability, but the thing that's done out of love or protection will always outweigh something that's done out of fear, and
I love it.
So
before we wrap up,
yeah.
is there anything else that you would like to? This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for like sharing and being vulnerable. I know we kind of got off topic, but we got enough like real questions. Yeah, that's we do. I heard there's something that you would like to talk about.
Yeah.
What would you like to tell the people?
Well, so for anybody who watched my interview with Reggie, I made a promise that by summertime I would start putting out certain content, and it's kind of sort of the summer. That's what people tell me. I guess though, if you're in the South Hemisphere, it's not.
Nope.
So maybe I have more time. So I've been in ops for what, 3 years? Actually, 3 years. Yeah. Shit. Yeah, I joined in June. It's been. I love this system so much. I can't say it enough. And there's lots of quirks and problems, and Dave and Chan are fantastic in a lot of things that they do, and I'm so grateful for what the system has done. And with my Consume Sleep, I've been sleeping on this shit for 3 years and have made some fun sense of it, and I want to start putting that into info-dominant tutorials.
Love it.
So I have I've put together an outline for videos I'm going to start creating that will take somebody. It's the point of this is something I can be like, oh, hey, have you ever heard of this ops thing? No? Okay, here, let me send you a video, right? And something that will explain it and be able to walk somebody who had never heard of it, which is really hard to do because it's very much a language, right? Like once you start speaking it, you speak it. And if you don't speak it, you're like, too much. What the fuck is going on, right? So I'm going to start putting together those videos. I'm really excited about it. I would also love some help if you're interested in helping. Do reach out, absolutely. In particular, I would love some help with editing the videos because I just don't have the bandwidth to take that on, but I don't want that to be a blocker. And I am absolutely willing to pay for that. I am, however, a millennial and therefore have student loans I'm still working on. So think of it more as beer money rather than like sustainable work. But if you're interested in helping out with any of that, please, please, please reach out. And I would love to also hear ideas. If there's specific things that like, you're like, I just don't get this in the ops system, like reach out. We'll talk about alphaness sometime with, on Full Blast, but
yeah,
lots of topics we haven't touched.
Totally.
Yeah.
Savi, thank you so much for hanging out. This was a wonderful show.
As always. Hopefully next time it won't take us as long because it was quite a stretch between the last video and this one.
Yeah, definitely sooner. I got to do the sign off that I've been attaching to the end of the Full Blast videos. Thanks so much for watching. As always, I love you. I see you. Now let's do the damn thing.